Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 220 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network. We're here to preview Week 9 in the CFL tonight. We'll take a look at the major matchup storylines, fantasy players to watch, and our betting picks for each of the games this week. Ryan, Mike, and Adam here with you this evening. I'm Ryan, joined, first off, Mike, how are you doing tonight?
Not too badly. It is great to be back. Had some things to take care of the last couple of weeks. But Ducks are back in a row, and the row of Ducks is back on the podcast.
Yes, happy to have you back on Wednesday nights, Mike. So, of course, we've been getting to hear you talk on our Tuesday bonus show each week lately, the Drive Home Call-In show, where you and I recap things from the previous week in the CFL. So if you haven't checked that out this week, check it out in the podcast audio feeds, folks. We nailed down a new format for it, and I think it worked a lot better this time around. Joining us here tonight as well. You got to zoom in a little further to see him across the room here. Some technology difficulties, but he makes it work anyways. The great Adam Stewart. Adam, how are you tonight?
Well, besides my monitor and over my office not working right, and I don't know. It's just one of those weeks, man. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, you can see my whole self tonight. And Trey gave us a suggestion a little while ago about our head-to-head fantasy about making a calendar shoot. This is why I don't make calendar shoots, okay?
You look great, Adam. You look great. And finally confirmation that you do, in fact, have legs. Because, only met you over over the video podcasts here so far. And you never know. You never know. All right. We are also live on a variety of different platforms. Thanks for presenting sponsor Game Time TV. We'll take your comments, take your questions in the live chat throughout the night. So send those in. Learn more about Game Time TV at GameTimeTV.ca or on Facebook at Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. We also want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Now, Trey is off tonight, so we unfortunately don't have him here to join us, but he did send in the betting odds for us to go over later on. And if you want to get his betting picks for the week, I'm sure he'll throw them out in our Discord channel as well, which is free to join if you're interested in catching the additional content, CFL chatter, etc., beyond our weekly episodes. Link to that is in the episode description to join the CFC Discord community there. But we'll get into things. Kicking things off here with our Week 9 preview. And it starts off Thursday night with the BC Lions coming into Winnipeg, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The Bombers hosting the Lions, top two teams in the West Division going head-to-head. Let's start with you here, Adam. What's the big storyline here for BC?
Well, I think the big storyline has to still be that Vernon Adams will miss a second straight week here with injury. I believe that's not ever a good sign for British Columbia Lions. The rumor is it's just another week, and it was a short week, so hey, let's keep Dane Evans in there. However, I'm starting to get a little more nervous about this. Is Vernon Adams really hurt, guys, or what are you thinking here? Or is it just a matter of time here? And also, how much does this really affect we all know that the BC Lions have lots of firepower, no matter which way you're looking at this. They've got lots of good receivers. They've got lots of help. Mizzle looked great the other night there against the Edmonton Elks. Okay, yeah, I know Edmonton Elks, but still look good. This is a whole different team. This is the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who have been right up in the top of the league for, the last 3 years, essentially. Is this going to be a concern for BC Lions, I think, this week? To me, it is. Ryan, what do you think?
I mean, the concern for me is how is Dane Evans going to perform against the Bombers, right? You mentioned VA being out. Now, I know, I was reading earlier today, and I apologize, I forget from who, but that Evans, last time he faced the Bombers last year, put up a record-breaking day from his own performances. But which performances for Evans do we remember most? It's those two in the Grey Cups where he really struggled. The Bombers defense got the best of him there. So I know Mike's going to talk a little bit more about the Bombers side of things here in a second, but this is an opportunity for us to see what version of Dane Evans actually comes out here, because they've got a great offensive scheme. They've got a lot of great weapons. I mean, Dom Rhymes is back this week as well. Seems like Mizzle came firing out of the cannon after he, lost the starting job for a game or two there. They've got the pieces there on offense. The question is, can they get it done against? And what's not going to be an easy matchup. I mean, the Lions looked good against Winnipeg last time out earlier this season, 30-6. I think the final score was there. See if they can follow it up on the road, short week against a team off the bye for the Lions here. Mike, what do you think about Dane Evans starting here for BC?
Mute, Mike.
Right, yeah, there we go. They made the right decision, I think, given the short week scenario. Playing on Saturday, I think it was, and then Thursday is a very short week to rest and recover. To me, Dane Evans didn't do anything to not start this game. I think they're leading the standings relative to the rest of the division, not necessarily first place. Allows them an opportunity to get Vernon Adams fully healthy. So, you know what? By all means, BC has earned the right to do what they want. I think they got this one right. And then another week to get VA healthy for what we hope will be the stretch run. And that'll be that for them. And then might as well pull that right into my thoughts about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And usually I talk about Collaros and Brady Oliveira and Kenny Lawler and Rasheed Bailey. I'm going to the defensive side of the ball, and two very critical defensive pieces coming back in Kyrie Wilson and Winston Rose. Kyrie Wilson has not played a lot of games. I think I had this stat sent to me. It's something like 17 games of availability out of 55 total games, which is interesting. But I had this this discussion with a friend of mine who went to suggest that, the Bombers should move on from Kyrie Wilson. And I attempted to push the brakes on that, just because I think he made the argument that your best option or mechanism is your availability. But I choose to look at the track record of Kyrie Wilson when in the lineup, and that far exceeds his unavailability, especially at a position where the Bombers have not necessarily had a lot of success with. And Winston Rose, he got lit up in the preseason, and everybody, seemed to think that he was going to be cut in training camp. Well, this is a chance for a savvy veteran to redeem himself, and I think this is the close to healthy, but the Bombers have been all year. So my key for the Bombers is just health. It looks like Connor Butenshaw will be back at tight end for the first time since, I believe, week 1. So, again, this team's slowly coming back to full health. The only one that seems to be out still from my recollection that might be a fairly critical piece, maybe Mike Miller. But all in all, I think this is the closest to general health that the Bombers will be, and I think it's going to be a great game. And I think one thing we're going to find out is that loss to BC is a admiration to the actual closeness of these two teams.
So that being said, I just you said that the Bombers are getting healthy here. I just wanted to run through quickly the injury reports here for both teams. Dalton Schoen, I mean, they say questionable. He'll play. Hip injury. He was out on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. He was pretty much playing. Winston Rose, same thing, fully practicing there with a foot injury. Kyrie Wilson for the Bombers, linebacker, Achilles. He's fully going as well. The only one here I see is Jared Beeksma. Knee injury. He's limited and was not practicing later on this week. And of course, with the BC Lions, Sean Shivers is a healthy scratch to be expected after the game from Taquan Mizzle. The other game, Keenan LaFrance, same thing, healthy scratch. Really, the BC Lions are pretty healthy, other than the injury to Vernon Adams Jr. and also shot Josh Banks. That was kind of a little bit later on of one hamstring injury. He's injured and will be out this week up against a Bomber offense that can definitely run the ball, I guess, with Brady Oliveira in there. That means probably that I'm guessing, Ryan, you're finally going to put Brady Oliveira into that fantasy spot, aren't you?
Well, I've had him in there a couple of times actually in the past, but this matchup, if we want to get into the fantasy players in this one's tricky, right? Because you've got BC side of things, their defense is insane so far this year. Like they're averaging 13 points against per game on the season. You don't run on the Lions, you don't really pass on the Lions defense. It seems like, across the board when you look at the matchups and the fantasy points other teams have put up against them. The highest average is 10.4 points. Like starting quarterbacks have averaged only 10 points a game against the Lions so far this year. So, it's hard to find picks on that side. And also, I think the Bombers defense is going to be better with those pieces back that Mike already touched on there. But I do still have some options in this game that I am considering. So we'll start with, let's start with the three I have on the BC side of things, and I'll get your guys' picks. I'll start with the defense. $11,000 for the Lions defense. They've put up double digits in 5 of their last 6 games. Like I said, 13 points against per game on the season. So you're actually getting points for points allowed, unlike most defenses. Also, last time they played the Bombers in week 3, they put up 7 sacks. Matthew Betts and crew have just been tenacious on that D-line. And I think the Bombers' offensive line has been a little more shaky this season than we've seen in recent years. So, I like the potential of the BC defense this week. I also like Taquan Mizzle because he does come in at $13,500. It's a little expensive, but take out the game against Toronto where they kind of fell behind and needed to pass. He's had 10-plus carries in every game he's been in so far this year. Dane Evans' first start last week included 22 carries for Mizzle granted, it was against the Elks, but the Bombers know how to get to Dane Evans. They're going to send lots of pressure for him. I could see him being leaned heavily on to open things up, whether it's dump passes, whether it's, just the run game to open things up and give him a little more time there. I do like the potential of Mizzle in this matchup. And Keon Hatcher as well. I'm a little bit nervous about the Dane Evans passing totals, but Hatcher's $10,700. And he's got a floor. He's scored 11 or more fantasy points in every game he's played so far, which means you can expect that solid floor from him almost any week. You get 1 or 2 extra plays on top of his average, and that's putting him at full value. So I think there's a reliable fantasy play there, even with a potential tougher matchup. That's who I've got on the BC side of things. Fantasy players to watch on both sides here. Mike, any players from BC or Winnipeg you are looking at for your lineup?
Yeah, for me, I really feel like this is a Kenny Lawler game. They made a couple big catches, but weren't necessarily made in the first game. I think he's a guy that can extend a lot of drives on second down. Certainly an option that the Bombers didn't have in the first game. For me, that's the kind of interesting one. I know I have in our private fantasy league for just the 4 of us, I have a decision to make who's going to start at quarterback. This is the statistics may be streamed, but Colorado starts, coming off a bye, but there's benefit to playing both him and Dane Evans. From a fantasy perspective, for me, I still feel like there might be cheaper alternatives that might generate more points than what both of these quarterbacks will probably put up, because I think you're either going to get a 16-13 game or you're going to get a 37-31 game. I certainly feel like this could be a low-scoring game. Two defenses with a lot to prove. There's a lot of pride on the line, and would not surprise me if both teams come in at under 20 once this one is done.
Well, I think we know where you're heading once we get to the betting picks on this game. But Adam, what about you? Fantasy picks in this one?
Yeah, the only one that I have right at the moment, and I'm debating this one a little bit, is Lucky Whitehead. 10.5. He's actually fairly reasonable right now. I don't know if Dominic Rhymes is 100% right now. If he was, I'd probably look at Dominic Rhymes. But traditionally, Lucky Whitehead does good against his former team. So I'm going to try to take Lucky Whitehead in this one so far. But I might change that idea yet. I'm still working on a fantasy roster, and we'll talk about why later on.
One option I do have on the Winnipeg side of things, Mike, you took him already. Kenny Lawler, $10,000 at wide receiver. Look, picking any wide receiver against the Lions is quite the tough sell with how good their defense has been. But Lawler's season debut last week, he had 9 targets. He put up 16.3 fantasy points in that. He's an elite talent. He's got the big play potential. I think you touched on that already, Mike. And it's really rare you get a Bombers top receiver at such a low price of $10,000. Like, they were all at $15K earlier this season. So if ever there is a week I might consider picking a Bombers receiver, it might be Kenny Lawler this week there for the fantasy options in this one. Looking over to our betting odds for the week, the line in this game is interesting. BC is, I would say, the better football team, certainly, right now. And they dominated the first matchup. But they come in as 6-point underdogs. The Bombers at -6. The over-under line is at 44.5. We don't have Trey here tonight to kick us off for the betting odds. So I'll kick us off on this game. We'll rotate through. I think I'm going to take – the line is scary. It's a big line, but I'm going to take the Bombers at -6 here. I just think this Dane Evans matchup against the Bombers, I think Kyrie Wilson coming back is huge for that defense as well. They've had so much time to prep. Mike O'Shea with time to prep over a bye week is scary. And I think it's going to be a close 6. Like, I could see it falling right at 6, but I'm going to take the Bombers to cover here in this one. And I'm going to over under 44.5. Yeah, it could be a pretty low scoring game. I'm going to take it to go over by a little bit. I think there's too much firepower on these offenses for it to fall under here. So I'll take the Bombers and I'll take the over. Mike, I think we kind of heard where you were leaning, but what are you taking here?
Yeah, I'm going BC and I'm going the under. I like BC to win this one by 10 plus.
Do you think BC is going to win by 10 plus, but the overall total is going to be under 44.5?
Yes.
All right. That BC defense coming in strong.
I'm feeling a 23-13 kind of thing.
All right. I love it when you call your shot like that. Okay, Mike's got. So Mike and I fully disagree. Adam, are you leaning one way, or are you splitting all the difference down the middle here?
Well, this is going to be one of the weirdest weeks on earth because the Rider fan and the diehard Bomber fan are going to disagree. And that means I'm taking the Bombers. No, I think that they'll get -6. I think they're going to get over 6 points on the BC Lions. I mean, a converted touchdown essentially is what we're looking at here. So to me, Yeah, Bombers -6, and I'm going to take the over in this game. I think it's going to become a shootout for some reason because BC has enough talent on their side of the football. Dane Evans or no Dane Evans, I think there's enough talent there that they can light it up. And of course, the Blue Bombers have what they have, and I mean, it just has been enhanced now with Kenny the King Lawler in there. So to me, I think the Bombers are going to win this, and over 44.5.
By the way, last week's numbers, I'm just trying to look back at it. I think, well, Mike, you didn't send any picks in, but Trey and I went 2-2. I think we got against the spread. We got Ottawa wrong. We got Calgary wrong on that one. Adam, I think you went 3-1 because you did take Montreal to win by -2.5. The over/under, not sure off the top of my head because I don't remember what the final scores were in those ones, but a decent week at least against the spread there for us. Moving on to our second game of the week here. It's the Calgary Stampeders versus the former Calgary Stampeders, the Toronto Argonauts. The Calgary East, as they've called it at times in the past. The Argos, wait, where is this game? Is this game in Toronto or is it in Calgary?
In Calgary.
In Calgary. Okay, I gotta flip that around here on the screen. But yes, in Calgary, Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Let's start with you, Mike. What is the storyline here for Toronto?
Sorry, you cut out there for a minute. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, what is the major storyline here for Toronto?
Yeah, the major storyline for Toronto, and I'm sorry to have to say this, but it's get Chad Kelly and that offense back in gear because they had a really down night by Toronto offense and Chad Kelly standards against the Riders in Touchdown Atlantic. I think Kelly was in and around the 135-ish yards, give or take under 200 for sure. I think he's got a big bounce back. It sounds like Coach Dickinson tried to light a fire under his crew the other night by just seemingly listing off other reasons why they weren't winning. Hardly the commitment, I think, was his wording after the game, the commitment to one another. There was another coach that had an eyebrow-raising comment after the game last week, which I'll get to in a little bit. This is a Calgary team that's come close, but hasn't been able to make the big play. This is a Toronto team that has been very, very consistent. Even in that Touchdown Atlantic game, they showed that they can win in multiple ways. Interestingly enough, it looks like Calgary might, if I'm understanding this correctly, get Kadeem Carey back, who's listed as questionable. Did practice in full today. Don't know what that means. I guess we'll have to wait for the depth chart tomorrow. But again, I just feel like this is Toronto written all over it for a big rebound. However, Toronto on the road in the West hasn't necessarily been fresh roses and green grass historically. But I think if Toronto does what Toronto has been doing, I don't see them having a problem in this one.
It's funny that you say they need a bounce back when, the offense kind of sucked last week for Toronto. But also they scored a defensive touchdown. They scored a special teams touchdown, still put 30-something points on the board. So if that's a down day for the Argos, ain't nobody beating them this year, right? Like you stop the offense and they beat you everywhere else.
That's exactly why I hesitate saying bounce back. But it's that I can't find a flaw in this football team right now, but it's seemingly humming its way to an East Division title, which is going to be locked up in and around mid-September at this rate.
Well, but I'm looking at this here as, you know what, this is a kind of bounce back week, at least for the Toronto offense. I mean, you look 90 yards against a Saskatchewan Roughrider team that's trying to transition and try to get something going. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Riders' defense is good, but it isn't 90 yards like dominating teams, I didn't think. Although, we'll talk about the Riders later. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Stampeders, though, and really just their struggles to get the ball into the end zone. I mean, you look at that team, it's yes, they're missing offensive pieces. They're wide receivers. They've been short a few guys all season long. But, I mean, you look at this team, and Reggie Bagleton's still around. You still got you still got pieces in there that are coming in and adjusting. Markham Michelle has been actually a really good piece for the Stampeders coming into this one. It was very interesting to hear Dave Dickinson also say that we aren't in on the Darnell Stakey sweepstakes. I was kind of surprised for him to say that because really this defense for Calgary, especially right down the middle, gives up a very large amounts of running yards. So to hear him say, nah, we're good with the linebackers we got, either it's a cap issue or something's up, because Calgary, you would think, would just absolutely be all over a guy like Darnell Sankey, who's just possibly coming back from the XFL right now and is exploring his CFL options. Overall, what is with this Stampeders team? I'm trying to figure them out still, because I said last week they're the most inconsistent team there is this year, because I don't know what this is. I wouldn't have expected them really to lose 2 in a row. I mean, I predicted it, but I really didn't expect to be right against them losing against Montreal. What's going on here, Ryan?
Yeah, I think we're all trying to figure that out with Calgary right now. And, on the offensive side of the ball, it's the question marks of, I didn't expect this team to throw 40 times a game, which seems like they're doing. Jake Mayer's throwing the ball quite a bit lately this year. 44 pass attempts last week, 38 the week before, 37 the week before that. For Mayer, Dedrick Mills came in when Kadeem Carey was out with the injury and picked up right where he left off from his time last season and looked good, but it slowly trailed off each of the past couple of weeks. His involvement in that offense seems like they're throwing it downfield. I don't think they've really been out of games to the point where they've had to switch over to the passing game. And, when they're throwing it that often, a young quarterback like Jake Mayer is going to make mistakes, and he's made a couple of costly ones here and there that have cost them in that regard. So, yeah, the defense has given up their fair share of issues and big plays and things like that as well. And it's all these small little things that are maybe mistakes Calgary in years past doesn't make.
Really quickly, guys, do we feel that them throwing the ball an excessive amount shows a lack of trust in that offensive line?
Maybe a little, but I think it's more of when Kadeem Carey went down, I think they just kind of pulled away from the run. I mean, don't get me wrong, Dedrick Mills is a very good running back. Logan Paul is a pretty good running back. We've seen that last year. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure if it's just Calgary, if Jake Mayer maybe has some decision in this or what. But I just seem like they just decided that they're going to start throwing the ball this year. And with all the injuries to receivers, it's a very funny strategy from Calgary. But it could be partly with offensive line, but I think it's more of they just decided to kind of give up the run a little bit this year, right?
You were talking about Peyton Logan, right? I think you said Logan Paul. Isn't he that YouTuber / boxer or whatever? I think.
Yeah, I keep getting names mixed up. When people have two first names, it don't work well with me, even though that's what I thought.
Okay, just making sure I heard you right there. Dedrick Mills carries over his starts 19, 14, 14, 11, 6, and 5. So just 11 carries in his last 2 games, I believe it is, for Mills. It's gone downhill here. And I started to wonder earlier this season, because he looked good at the start. He looked good last year, if Kadeem Carey's injury is serious and let's say all of a sudden they're going to the off season. If he's injured potentially and out of a contract, do the Stampeders go with the cheaper option in Dedrick Mills? Well, now I'm not so sure. And now, getting Kadeem Carey back this week could be the thing they need to. And I don't know if it'll be this week or next week, but it seems he's close. Maybe that's a thing that the Stamps need to spark that offense again.
Here's the other thing, guys. Market Michelle, 4 or 5 targets last week, 0 catches.
Yeah, 0 catches last week. His first game of the year, I think he had 6 targets, 1 catch. We'll get into talking about Mark and Michelle in a second. A little bit more when we get to the fantasy players, spoiler alert. But anything else between these two teams for the storylines or injury reports here? Adam, do you have the injury reports?
No, I'm good. But one thing I would like to say, just as a positive for Calgary, is just how they find different players to fill in different positions who we maybe don't expect much from as the year goes on. Odom's Duke, to me, had a quiet game last week, a quieter game by his standards. Still got the job done. Young guys like Barnes, big catches, not a lot of catches, but certainly big. Other than that, it's just Calgary needs to find more consistency to be able to win these close games, but they seem to be losing. And, this Calgary team could easily be 1-5 if they don't make a big comeback in Saskatchewan. So, that's by the same token, they could also have 1 or 2 more wins.
If they win those 2 games in overtime, right? So
it's that age-old adage of, are they 2-5 bad, or are they better than their 2-5 record indicates, with a little bit more consistency? So we're about to find out in this one. I think this game for Calgary will be the chance to get back into the Western playoff picture.
One quick thing I want to mention that's relevant for both of these two teams is the Toronto Argonauts released wide receiver Markeith Ambles earlier today. Now, he hasn't played yet this year. I thought it was injury related because he seems like too talented of a receiver to be the healthy scratch. We've talked a lot about Calgary needing that wide receiver depth, a young group of receivers. I wonder if he's a guy Dave Dickinson's familiar with from their time in Calgary together. Adam, what do you think before you give us the injury reports here? Do you think it's a potential fit for Ambles to come home?
I would think so. I mean, you look at what the Calgary Stampeders are using right now for wide receivers. I mean, they're using guys that have been just drafted into the CFL or guys that have just started in the CFL. So Markeith Ambles fits right in there. He's familiar with the offense. He's familiar with the playbook. He's familiar with the system in Calgary. It's a good fit. I think if I was Dave Dickinson, I would definitely at least talk to him, see what exactly he's wanting. That being said, maybe they think they're fine. I don't know. To me, I'm surprised that they, like I say before, I was surprised that they said that they won't take interest in Darnell Sankey, because I figured, that offensive, our linebacking core definitely could use an upgrade, but I guess they got Cam Judge and they got a few other pieces in there. Calgary seems to really do well at developing linebackers. I'm just going to give a quick injury report here, and then we'll get into fantasy. But Darius Vladeck is injured. He's going to be out this week. He is fully practicing, it says, though, but will be out. Isaiah Cage out as well. Same thing with Maurice Carnell. Yep. I think I said that right. Yep. Perfect. Henoch Moama's out as well. A knee injury, head injury for Spencer Nichols. He'll be out as well. Questionable is also DeMonte Coxey, which would be probably a pretty big one for your fantasy in case you're wondering on that one. A couple other ones here for Calgary Stampeders: Kadeem Carey, Aaron Crawford, Trey Odoms Dukes, Colton Hunchak. I expect that one. But Cam Judge also questionable this week. Dedrick Mills is questionable this week. I think that may be more of an illness, so they're seeing if Kadeem Carey is maybe ready to go. And also Perry Young, linebacker, also questionable this week as well. Cole Tucker, the wide receiver that just came in here, he's going to be out this week. So make sure you adjust your rosters accordingly. And maybe before the fantasy actually gets started, I'll talk about that again later on. But in the meantime, I'm going to let Ryan talk about what he thinks is good in this fantasy matchup.
Well, it's interesting that both of Calgary's running backs here are questionable this week, right? Is Kadeem Carey going to come back? Is Dedrick Mills ready to go? So many questions up in the air. Depth chart comes out and neither of them are on it. And Levante Bellamy for probably $2,500 in fantasy is the starting running back. Then, yeah, I'm probably putting him in my lineup just for the cheap value play to spend big elsewhere. But I won't put him in the fantasy players to watch for now. If I put the depth charts in our Discord channel every time they come out as well. And if there is a notable one that kind of shifts things, I will add more players to the player to watch list in there. So make sure you check out some recommendations based on depth chart changes. But as we expect things to be and stands now, I've got two names on the Calgary side, and they're both at wide receiver. And we've talked about both of them a little bit already here today. Trey Odoms-Dukes is $11,900 in fantasy, and I think he might be one of the biggest locks possible of the week if he's ready to go. He is questionable, like you said, after being limited the past couple of days in practice, but he's averaging 8.9 targets per game. It's the third most in the CFL, and the Argos give up a whopping 18 points per game to the left slot back position, which is 5 more than any other team in the league. It's by far one of the highest totals anybody gives up to any particular wide receiver position. I think it's one of the juiciest matchups you can possibly have. I think this team is going to probably throw 30, 40 times again, and Odoms-Dukes is probably getting a quarter of those at least. So I think that's, if he's on the depth chart, I'm probably locking that play in there if I can make it work money-wise. And if you can't and you still want to buy into a Calgary offense that could be passing quite a bit against an Argos defense that is quite susceptible to it, Markin Michel, $6,000, 4 targets last week, 0 catches. So I understand if most people don't want to go back to the well after being disappointed and getting that goose egg in your lineup. But his target share has remained consistent between 4 and 6 targets every single week. The offense likes to pass a lot, and the Argos give up the second worst in the CFL to the left wideout spot at 13.4 points per game. So I think there's still value to be had in Markin Michel, and I think that value would only go up also if Odoms-Dukes isn't quite ready to go in this game. That's who I've got on the Calgary side. I'll give you a name on the Toronto side here shortly, but back to you first, Adam. Toronto and Calgary. Anybody from either of these teams catch your eye?
Oh, I got lots this time on both of these teams, actually. I'm going to pull off the Trey Colbeck. I'm going to be going quite a bit in the Toronto side of things. Chad Kelly is listed as my quarterback currently at the moment. I think he's going to have a bounce-back game just because, you know what, he ain't going to have 2 bad games like he did last week against the Riders. And traditionally, the Stamps aren't maybe the strongest of defenses, I think, this year, and especially in the run game. So that means that AJ Ouellette is definitely on my roster this week. He's had some big games, and Calgary gives up a lot of running yards. So to me, definitely he's on my list as well. You did mention Trey Odoms-Dukes. I do have him on my roster here just because of, again, fantasy. Remember, fantasy doesn't mean you pick the team that wins the game. You pick the players that win you the most points. So I don't think, spoiler alert, probably, I don't think Calgary is going to win this game. But I think that Trey Odoms-Dukes is going to have a good game. So as long as he's healthy and he's playing, and I'll keep Trey Odoms-Dukes on my list. And the only other guy that I'm thinking about, again, if that running back is, if both Carey and Mills are hurt, I may pick up the Calgary running back just for the sake of picking up the guy because it's cheap. But we'll see how that works for me. Mike, anybody you got in mind right now?
Yeah, I don't want to run the risk of repeating what we have just talked about for the last 10 minutes. But based on what I feel about this matchup, this will be primarily where a lot of my players would come from in this game. Yet I still have some decisions to make. Um, there's not a lot being said, but it just hasn't already been said about Trey Odom's Duke. I really, 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 really am fascinated by this guy because he seems to get a lot of targets his way and catches a lot of balls. But, at the risk of repeating myself, I like the Argos defense in this game as well. And then I also expect AJ Willett to, do AJ Willett type of things and probably have a 100-yard game, and then Andrew Harris comes in and spells him off. And yeah, it's I expect the Argos to play the Argos way, and I think Calgary hangs with them for a while, but when all is said and done, this kind of disappears.
Yeah, in terms of the options on the Toronto side, I didn't have them on the list originally, but you guys convinced me, and I'm going to throw them in there because as Adam was talking about them, I started looking into the stats, and I think you do have to consider AJ Ouellette as an option here for the Argos in this one. His performances have slightly gone downhill pretty much every week since week 3, but outside of last week where he finished with 9.7, he's had over 11 in every game since week 2 so far this year. So $12,300 salary. You're probably hoping to get somewhere around 18 to 20 points from him there. Most of the time, I don't know if he's getting that, but I am encouraged by his target shares going up. Last week was 3 targets. The last 3 weeks before that was 2. If he can keep getting that higher and higher, then that makes for more potential from a fantasy perspective. Just rushing for 80 yards a game isn't going to get you a good running back. He's got to get the receptions, he's got to get the targets, and he's got to get the touchdowns, which he hasn't done in a couple of weeks. So been a bit down on Ouellette in the past couple of weeks, but like you said, the matchup is good. To starting running backs, the Stamps give up second most in the league in terms of fantasy points and 14.4 per game, only behind Edmonton, who's on a bye this week. So it is actually the best running back matchup of the week against the Stampeders. On the other, and I also have the Argos defense at $9,700 in the players to watch here. They've put up double digits in 3 of their last 5 games. They face Jake Mayer, who leads the league with 11 interceptions on the year, and the Stamps also give up a couple sacks per game usually. It's one of the league's best defenses in a great matchup here that could force them to pass the ball downfield quite a bit there as well. So those are our fantasy players to watch for this matchup. We go to the betting lines here, and the Argos are 8.5-point favorites on the road in Calgary. The over-under is at 51. Let's go to you here first. Adam, what are you going to do for your betting picks in this one?
I said it earlier. I think the Argonauts are going to win this game. 8.5 is a pretty big amount. That being said, though, I think the Argonauts are the better team. I think they have the better offense. I think they have the better defense. And we've seen them score lots of points in special teams. So give me the Argonauts. And 51. Could be a lot of pick sixes, but I don't know. No, I think I'm going to go with the under on this one, just because I think that's quite a few points. The Argonauts did get shut out there in the offense a little bit last week, and that kind of played in a little bit of my thoughts. And Stampeders, I don't know why, they just can't seem to score very often and consistently. So, yeah, Toronto the under.
Yeah, how many Rene Paredes field goals do they need to get to the over here for you? I mean, you got 6 of them. You have them on your roster. You got 6 last week.
Yeah, and by the way, I just want to thank Trey again for releasing Rene Paredes right when he did.
Oh, Trey. He made some good moves this week. We'll get into that in a bit, or at the end of the show also. Mike, what about you? What are you taking in this game?
Yeah, I like Toronto to cover here, and I'm going to take the over. I I think this is one of those where the Argos could put up 40 just by themselves. I'm a little curious to me because this line, at least on the over-under, seems a little bit on the low side. I'm going to go 65 plus points here.
Wow, that's a high total. So you're thinking something like, what, 40 to 30? Or I guess that would be 70.
41-27, something like that.
All right. Yeah.
So, like, blowout in the second half, or what are you thinking, Mike?
Sorry?
Like, blowout in the second half, or what are we thinking here?
Yeah, I'm thinking they keep it close and then pull away late second quarter, early third quarter with a couple turnovers.
Okay.
Just because I think Jake Mayer is going to throw the ball an awful lot, and I think that's going to lead to a couple interceptions, if not pick sixes.
Yeah, I'm going to take Toronto here as well to cover the -8.5. And I hate it when the line is this big, but I think I'm also going to take the over. And a large part of that is both the Argos have produced a lot of points, and also, they give up a lot through the air, and Calgary is a passing team. I think Jake Mayer is going to throw for over 300 yards in this game. I just think he might throw a couple interceptions, which could lead to more points on the board for Toronto there as well. So I'm not going to go quite as high as Mike and say something in the 65-point range necessarily, but I think this is one that I could see being a 52 to 57-point game in this one. So I'll take the Argos and the over there as well.
Well, just for context, something like 28-28 already puts it at the over.
Yep, that is absolutely true. And that's where the math gets hard on these sometimes, because that seems like a very reasonable score to me. So let's move on to our third game of the week here. We've got the Montreal Alouettes heading into Hamilton, I believe, to face the Ticats. They've played once earlier this year, if I'm remembering correctly. This game comes Saturday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Let's start with Adam. What are we talking about here for Hamilton?
Well, they're playing at home. That's nice. They also have Bo Levi Mitchell back on the 6-game injured list after breaking his leg. And
seriously,
apparently still going to...
What, give me your thoughts on that, because we already talked about it yesterday. What do you think about the play call?
I don't know. I thought that Craig Dickinson is a pretty terrible coach. Tommy Condell, what in the world are you thinking? If that was Tommy's call or Bo's call, I don't know whose it is. Whoever it is shouldn't be on a football team. Honestly, it's a bad call. You're winning the game. All you got to do is take a knee. What else is there to do? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know it was a divisional rival. I know you're probably competing for him for playoff spots, and you probably want to get as many points as you possibly can. I get the theory of why you did what you did, but at that point, Bo Levi Mitchell probably isn't 100%. If he is, well, he must have super regenerative powers or something. The game is pretty well over, at hand. Just take the win and walk out. You get the season series at this point because Hamilton already won once before against Ottawa. So in reality, there was no point of getting those extra points. It was a dumb call, a dumb play. A quarterback that shouldn't be injured is now injured, and we're all for the worse of it, or for the better of it, because we don't have to see Bo Levi Mitchell throw 5 interceptions and we get the chance to see Taylor Powell. Because, in all honesty, that's where we're going now. Taylor Powell is back here for this Hamilton Tiger Cats. He's going to be in for probably a few games anyways, because Matthew Schultz is also injured. He's had some help a little bit here in the last little bit from James Butler kind of coming out of the backfield. He's had a little bit of help from others. Is there any piece here, guys, that would keep Taylor Powell going on the right path here that you can see? Is it just the play call from Tony Condell has to be better? What do you guys think? Ron?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about we're 8-9 weeks into the CFL season, so I've talked about for that many weeks that the play calling needs to be better in Hamilton, except maybe on their bye week. Maybe I gave them a break then. I think that is a big piece of it. Taylor Powell, He's got a tough matchup against this Montreal defense. Is actually pretty good and been shutting passing attacks down pretty well so far this year. So I don't think it's an easy matchup for Powell to come back in here. I think he's got to play smart football. Got to use his legs a little more. We saw him do a 20-something yard touchdown run in his first start a couple of weeks ago. I like that from him. Good mix of that in his game, and I think he does have the potential to be successful here. They've got weapons in that offense. You just got to use them.
Mike, any thoughts on Taylor Powell and what they could do?
He's got nothing.
He's got nothing. Okay, no problem. I'm just going to quickly run through the injury report for the Red Blacks and the Alouettes, and then Mike, you're going to give us your thoughts on those Montreal Alouettes. Over on the Ottawa side of the football for injuries this week so far. What's that? Sorry?
Hamilton, not Ottawa.
Oh, Hamilton. My bad. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm clicking on the wrong things. That's why, because I said Ottawa at first. I clicked on the wrong one, but here we go now. We've got Walter Fletcher. He's been fully practicing this week. Deontay Evans has been did not practice with a leg injury today. A couple of limiteds as well. Sean Jameson, Greg Ellingson, he's been limited in practice. He has been on the 6th game. Also, Austin Mack is on the 6th game, which is a big loss if he doesn't play. He has an ankle injury that's been nagging him. Keon Julian Grant did not practice, hand injury. That's a pretty big one. Also, for the Montreal Alouettes.
He is confirmed to be out this week, I believe, as well.
Confirmed out? Okay. Yeah, I didn't have that quite yet, but yeah, okay. The other one that I've got here is over on the Hamilton side of the football. Well, of course, we know Bo Levi Mitchell is out. Can't really play with a broken leg. Casey Sales, he will also be limited right now. He's been limited in practice, defensive lineman, Achilles injury. I don't know why it always says Achilles injury and it's not that serious. Usually whenever I hear the word Achilles, that's not good. Unless it's inflamed or something. I'm not a doctor. What can I say?
I'm out for at least 6 weeks just hearing about an Achilles injury. So,
well, that's what I always think. I mean, really, Achilles? Like I said, I'm not a doctor. I just play one here once every so often. Tyrell McAllister, the new running back that they've been kind of running in different plays and doing some returns with, limited in practice this week with an ankle injury. Who else do we have on here? Mason Bennett, defensive lineman, hamstring injury. He hasn't practiced yet this week. Same thing with Anthony Johnson, wide receiver, American. He hasn't practiced as well with a hamstring injury. Miles Marino. That name must scare some people in Ottawa, at least the Marino part. He's not been practicing as well in the injury, the fullback. Other than that, that's what I see right at the moment, unless I'm missing something. Chris Van Zyle's been limited in practice, just non-football related, so probably he'll be fine, the big offensive lineman. Mike, what can you tell us about the Montreal Alouettes this week?
Yeah, so sorry, guys. Yeah, they look like, whoops. So I have some really weird things going on my screen right now. We're good. No, I listen, I like what I like a lot of what I saw from Montreal last week. Obviously, Julian Grant injury, Matt's question mark. It's kind of a little bit not ideal, but Montreal did give them a lot of credit. I think they're deeper at receiver than a lot of people give them credit for. It was the return of Phil Pott last week. That was very, very interesting. Didn't factor in on the statistical end of it at all. I liked Sneed. He's a very, very sneaky sort of wide receiver, had a 3-touchdown game. Another positive note is that Stanback had 60-plus yards rushing. I think he's only averaged something like 40 40 or so coming into that game. One negative thing is a lot of those yards were in the first half for Stanback, and it was kind of neutralized in the second half. The positive is I don't think Cody Fajardo took a sack in the game. If he did, it was very little. That's a positive development. Montreal, for me, guys, is the front runner for second in the East as far as I'm concerned. They've shown more constant consistency than Ottawa and Hamilton. That being said, from kind of, well, what you see is what you get with him. But I still feel like overall consistency, Montreal might be the second best team in this division. And I think that's the way it's going to play out. But all in all, in my humble estimation, Montreal needs to work on that killer instinct. They have multiple attempts to put Calgary away last week and didn't do it. In fact, it was really only mistakes of their own that gave Calgary a chance to get down to the goal line late in the game, when really it shouldn't have happened, in my mind. But I think, given Montreal's record, they have flaws, but I think the good outweighs the bad in that scenario. And if there's a TV watching sort of rankings as far as, if I take my Bomber hat off and there's specific teams that I want to watch, suddenly these divisions gotten pretty intriguing with a lot of teams to watch, whereas in previous years it would have been for me the West, with Calgary or Saskatchewan. Montreal, very entertaining to watch. Ottawa, very entertaining to watch. Toronto, what they're doing with Telly, very, very interesting to watch. And I mean, to get into this whole discussion, not to get too far away from the original task at hand, but I think the balance of power, if it isn't even, is slowly tilting in the favor of the East Division, ever so slightly. Because there were games in recent years where the West would have won head-to-head against the East, and it's not even a question. A lot of the Eastern teams are cutting into that. And I think Montreal is number 2 in the East as far as watchability, and they might be in the top 4 for watchability across the whole CFL.
Yeah, and I did see some comments there in the chat. Looks like we had a couple more people hop in there. Hi, Richard. Hi, Jeff. Asking who's left at receiver for the Alouettes. I believe Courtney Davis is probably going to come into the lineup now with Cam Julian Grant out. He did play 2 games earlier this year. I think he came out of the lineup when Tyson Philpott came back in. So he'll probably come back in because presumably Ellingson's not ready to go yet, and neither is Reggie White. Let's talk fantasy players, and I'll start on the Montreal side of things. Austin Mack, throw him out there once again this week at $10,000. We knew he was inevitably going to have a down week eventually, and if that down week was a 6.7 points last week, well, that's not too bad. He's still got 5 targets. He still averages 8 per game. If KJG, Keon Julian Grant, is out this week, he averages 7 targets a game. Those have to go somewhere. I expect Mac to be a target machine yet again this time around, and he's also got a decent position matchup against the Ticats, who give up 10.7 to left wideouts. Here's a name I haven't put in the players to watch once yet this year, and he finally makes the list, and that is William Stanback at $9,000. Stanback is a great running back. He's not a great fantasy running back. Hasn't been for the past couple of years, but he's getting there, and it intrigues me. My biggest knock has also always been the lack of receiving work for him. But so far this year, he's averaged almost 4 targets a game and 27.5 receiving yards per game. That is something you absolutely like to see from a running back. He's still super cheap at $9,000. And he's put up around 13 points in 4 of his 6 games so far this year, but doesn't have any touchdowns on the season. So if he can keep producing like that and then get in the end zone in a favorable matchup against the Ticats here, I think he'll have a great week for the price. I think Stanback is a great fit potentially there, and one of the top running back options for the price this week. I've got a couple options on the Ticats side of things as well, but any fantasy players quickly here for you. Let's start with you, Mike, from either side.
Yeah, no, at the risk of repeating myself, just basically insert what Ryan just said in the last 2 minutes into here, and we'll go with that.
All right. Anybody on the Hamilton side for you or no?
For me?
Yeah.
That's interesting because when you talked about cheap value, I think there might be some value in playing the Hamilton starting quarterback, whose name escapes me at the moment.
Taylor Powell.
Powell, just from a standpoint that he can kind of throw the ball, run the ball, make things happen. The scary thing for me with him, and I think sort of any other quarterback in their second game, would be can they minimize the turnovers? So can you stomach that sort of suggestion? I got burned by this. I think it was 2 weeks ago. I put McAllister in my fantasy lineup. Certainly he could get a little more touches. James Butler all of a sudden quietly, sort of methodically doing things to, well, make Condell want to run the ball all of a sudden. But yeah, no, it's. I hate to say this way, but Hamilton, for fantasy purposes, has been very Jekyll and Hyde, and I think it goes with the consistency at their quarterback kind of scenario, and that's why if it's not McAllister, if it's not James Butler, I'm almost wondering if Hamilton is a no play this week.
And it's possible. It's very possible to have teams like that. Adam, what about you? Either side of this matchup, who catches your fantasy eye?
Well, absolutely. I do like William Stanback in this game. Hamilton, I just don't trust that defensive line to get the job done up front. So I think that I'll take Stanback for sure. One that I'm going to probably, and I don't know if I'm ready to be hurt again, but I guess I'm going to try. Duke Williams, come on back to my team here. 10,500. He's a little expensive, but here's my thing. He's averaging 13 fantasy points a week. He had a very good game against the Alouettes in week 1. I think he's going to be a good pick this week. I hope he's going to be a good pick this week. Just don't do anything dumb this week, Duke Williams. And maybe I'll pick you again some other time later on. Usually, and he's also had 419 yards reception this year. I mean, he's had a decent year. It's just that, the team around him, everybody looks at it and says, I'm not going to pick Hamilton, and I'm not picking Hamilton players. So I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to take Duke Williams over Austin Mack. I mean, I was debating about Mack. I was debating about Williams. But I think Taylor Powell needs somebody open and a guy that he can rely on and lean on. And I think that's going to have to be Duke Williams. So that's what I'm going to go with.
All right, for the Ticats, I've got James Butler. I've got my eye on him here this week. He's averaging almost 5 targets a game. In his last 3 games, there was that brief moment where in 3 of 4 weeks, they gave him at least 14 carries, and then it dropped off here now again. 8 carries 2 weeks ago, 6 carries last week. That's unacceptable to give that to James Butler. And that concerns me.
Back off. So Tony Gondell's back from holidays?
I guess so, yeah. That's unacceptable usage of your star running back to me. But even despite that, he has 26 combined rushing yards in the last 2 weeks, but he's averaged 40-something yards through the air and 4 catches a game. over that span. That's 8 fantasy points just through the air there. You don't pass really against the Alouettes. They've got a very good passing defense, and I think there's more room for them to run there. Also, you've got a rookie in Powell there that should be able to lean on him a little bit. I'm high on James Butler in this matchup. I think he is the best matchup there available for the Ticats. And you know what? I'm going to throw Tim White in here at $12,000 as well. He's struggled to put up the big numbers this year we expect from him, but he plays against it. But I think he's got the best matchup of anybody on the team at left slot back here. They give the Alouettes actually give up the second most to that position in the CFL, and a substantial 3 more points per game than they do to any other position at wide receiver. So if they're drawing up a proper offensive game plan, chances are, in my opinion, that Tim White's going to get the ball going his direction a decent number of times. If there's ever a time for him to get going, I think this is the matchup to do it. We'll move on to our betting picks here, and we've got Montreal is 2.5-point favorites on the road in Hamilton. The over/under line is 45. Mike, I think you're up first on this game.
Yeah, I like Montreal, and I like Montreal to cover, and I like them to go under. Sorry, I was just playing with numbers in my head, and the one I came up with was 23-20.
I like how you come up with these scores so quick. I can never do it. I can never pick the scores in my head. Yeah, 23-20 would do it. The Alouettes would win by 3. It would cover it. It would match what you've picked there so far. Adam, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Alouettes again as well. I think that with Sean Levin now going into his second week, he's ready to go, and he's going to probably make a miserable life for a young rookie quarterback, unfortunately. So I'm going to go with the Alouettes, and I'm going to go with the under on this game as well. I think that there just isn't much scoring options, especially if Austin Mack is really hurt as badly as they say. If he is, and he actually is out, that could really affect that over-under, I think, pretty significantly. So, yeah, give me the under and give me the Alouettes.
I will take the under here as well. I'm not sure how Powell's going to do against this this Montreal defense. Also, Montreal's offense has really struggled to put touchdowns on the board. I mentioned that Stanback doesn't have a touchdown yet this year. An interesting stat line quickly here for Cody Fajardo. He only has passing touchdowns in 2 of his 6 games, I believe, so far this season, and he's never thrown for more than 300 yards, and yet he still sits third place in average fantasy points among quarterbacks because he likes to run the ball in. So they don't throw very many touchdowns, the Alouettes. He's run in for a couple, but low-scoring game, I think this matchup means for these two teams, so I will take the under here as well. Let's move on to our final game, or Mike?
Excuse me, but I'd like to open the nomination process for David Cote to be Special Teams Player of the Year in the East Division.
I'm glad I picked him in our fantasy draft. Let's move on to our final game of the week here, which is the Ottawa Red Blacks at the Saskatchewan Roughriders. This game takes place Sunday night to finish off the week. Let's go to you first, Mike, for the Ottawa side of things here.
Yeah, Ottawa victimized by a weather delay, somewhat victimized by an offense that couldn't really get going, had a chance to win again. Maybe a victim of poor play calling again down by the goal line. Otherwise, we'd be talking about a 4, maybe even a 5-game win streak if you put, the recent 2 losses, at about 2.5 yards gained. Obviously, there's a lot of positives for Ottawa. It looks like they're going to get Braylon Addison back. It looks like they suddenly found a running game. Lorenzo Molden might be the Defensive Player of the Year in the East Division, although some Argos might have a say at that by the time this is all done. Dustin Crum, hard to suggest this, but needs to be better. Needs to be a little bit more accurate in my mind. Hamilton had a linebacker spying on him, so his ability to escape the pocket was severely limited in some cases. I think at points, Tahari Jones needs to take the training wheels off of Dustin Crum and just sort of release Dustin Crum to do what he wants to do. For me, and I'm sorry to sound so offensive heavy with this thing, but there seems to have to be an understanding that you need to be able to trust your quarterback. I'm not saying that's not happening, but I just wonder what Dustin Crum's ability is to change the play at the line. I don't know if he's there yet where he can kind of read his own plays and see what's coming. But I just like to see a little more trust in Dustin Crum. If this continues, I fully believe that he's the franchise quarterback. Certainly one of the better ones they may have had in Ottawa, maybe since Henry Burris. That might be stretching it a little bit, but you know what? I'll come out and say this right now, even though it's going to be kind of destroying my pick. Ottawa has to come into this game and assert their will and put their foot on the gas in this one. To me, the way their opposition is playing, there's zero excuses right now. If Ottawa doesn't come out of here with the victory, it will be very disappointing, and there will be a lot of questions asked about that team at quarterback this week.
What do you got over on the Saskatchewan side of things, Adam, or anything to add on Ottawa?
Not a whole lot on Ottawa. I mean, they've had a pretty good season now. All of a sudden, their it turned right around when Dustin Crum showed up, and good on him. I love seeing young quarterbacks come into this league and start to show something, because you know what? We need those young quarterbacks, no matter who it is. If it's Dustin Crum, if it's even Dane Evans, he's not the youngest guy around, I won't say that, but Chad Kelly and a few others, though, it would be just great to see some more guys coming up. And whoever wins the Edmonton job, I guess, who's getting tried out this week. That's I wanted to just quickly bring up. Yeah, Edmonton. They're Taylor Cornelius is now the number 3 quarterback this week. Trey Ford and not Seth Daggy. Don't call him Seth Daggy. Jared is also the guy that could possibly get that job. So they're going to try anyways. Hey, good on them for trying stuff. Unlike the team that I got to talk about now, which is the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Boy, did that bug me the other day when Craig Dickinson, during the press conference, right after a game in Halifax in which they lost, said, "Hey, Mason Fine is our starting quarterback the next week." Good on him for giving him the confidence. I get it. I mean, you got to stick with your guns, I suppose. But you know what? There's also a guy that went 4 for 4, had a touchdown, and that was Jake Dolegala. And Rider Nation has been screaming for Jake Dolegala to possibly get more of a look and get more of a chance to start. I mean, the commentator of the Rough Riders has been screaming about Mason Fine being the guy, and he hasn't done anything wrong to lose his job. Think about it. Sometimes you don't have to do anything wrong to lose your job in sports. You just can't be, you got to be better just than the other guy. And in this case, right now, Mason Fine is throwing too many interceptions to say that he's better than Jake Dolegala. I'm sorry. It's time to give the other guy the opportunity to get his chance, or at least you have a very short lease. If Jason Fine is going to start this game, you have a very short lease. Now, that's my opinion on the things. The Riders also in this game will be bringing in another offensive lineman. They did this week. I don't know if he'll be playing. It's Jordan Tucker. He was in the offensive line during training camp. He came over a little while ago, so it'll be very interesting to see what happens with him. Eric Lofton, actually, I was just looking through the transaction list, was very quietly released by the Saskatchewan Roughriders, which is another offensive lineman. He was released actually on July 21st. Kind of funny that one never got brought up, but nevertheless, the Riders need offensive line help. They always have, and that's what everybody's going to be talking about for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, because it never goes away right now for the Rough Riders. Until they can get that settled up, there isn't really much more to talk about. The defense is stellar. There is I think the Riders' defense right now is probably maybe best or second best in the league behind BC. It's a great defense right now in Saskatchewan. Ryan just backed into a lucky pick when he picked them for the head-to-head.
I didn't back into a lucky pick. They were the first defense picked off the board in our fantasy draft. Yeah.
All we know is when Ryan picks the first player, he means he wanted to get the second player. That's who he's always after. It's the second one, right?
And it works out fine when they're both the top scoring defenses.
Adam, can I just interject on something quickly? You seem so set on Dolegala getting a look. Is that based on previous history or one drive in garbage time? Because I can't help but think that there's a segment of people out there that's saying, yeah, Adam, it's one thing for him to get the starting job. But yes, he went 4 for 4 with a couple confident throws when the game was seemingly out of hand. And I'm not trying to disagree with you because I happen to agree with you, and I think that should have been the decision right from day one. But what would you say to the crowd that says, yeah, Adam, but he only came in one drive, was 4 for 4, looked confident doing so, but really, Adam, the game was over.
Fair enough, but my thing is he's the bigger quarterback. He's got the bigger arm. He is the guy that I think has more experience in the quarterback position in the pro leagues. And I think, honestly, he's got more of the pedigree than Mason Fine at this moment. I think that Mason Fine is an okay quarterback, don't get me wrong. He definitely proved it over the years. Has had it, and let's face it, it don't matter if you put Dolegala or you put Shea Patterson or you put Mason Fine in there right now. The offensive line is going to get you murdered. My thought on this is Jake Dolegala is 6'8" or 6'9". He's a tall guy. He can maybe at least see something coming before he gets nailed. That being said, probably not the most mobile quarterback, and I'm sure that's probably also thought of in Saskatchewan, especially with a head coach like Craig Dickinson, who's been used to quarterbacks that can run around a little bit. Need be Cody Fajardo or even Mason Fine can move around a little bit. Even Trevor Harris, to an extent, we've seen him moving around, even though maybe he shouldn't have against Edmonton. We won't talk about that. Nevertheless, I think that Dolegala, to me, is the better quarterback for the future. We've seen 3 years of Mason Fine already, and we haven't seen a whole lot like that spark out of Mason Fine yet that I think the Rider Nation has been looking for. So that's why I'm saying Dolegala probably should at least get more of a look. I don't want to say that he should be anointed the starter and paraded down Victoria Avenue. I want to say, though, that he should be the guy that probably gets maybe an opportunity here and there, play a series, and get him starting in the CFL a little bit more. Yes, last year he did play a little bit against, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the Banjo Bowl after he got carted in pretty much from Jeremy O'Day. I think he played maybe like a little bit of a series in those. And I think he maybe had a game afterwards against Edmonton that he played a little bit. But it wasn't like, again, consistent, steady starts. I think that now you have to get into the time where Mason Fine maybe got a short leash and you put in Dolegala.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and say keep giving Mason Fine the start. I think he was held back in at least one of his starts by a poor offensive game plan that was just trying to ease him into it. The interceptions have been a concern, but other than that, I think he's completed. I think he's made some good passes in there, and I think if Harris is going to be out most of the season, you got to build that consistency and that chemistry. You also benefit from Calgary not being very good and Edmonton being hot garbage. So I think there's still room, even if Fine can play respectable ball. I just want to see the Riders have consistency. What I wouldn't want to see them do is go to Dolegala. He struggles a game. Okay, go back to Fine, back and forth, right? Which maybe it wouldn't be. Maybe Dolegala would steal the show. But I'm in the camp of give Mason Fine more more starts here going forward. What do we have for injuries here, Adam? Do you have the injury report for these two teams?
Yep, sure do. Over on the Ottawa side of the football, Braden Addison, he is apparently going to be coming back fairly soon. Non-football related, he was out on Wednesday, but not a big issue. Tavon Smith is back as well. That's a nice Canadian wide receiver for them as well. Dante Bull, he didn't practice because of an injury, illness. He'll be fine. Damon Webb, shoulder injury, didn't practice. Douglas Coleman, another defensive back, didn't practice because of an illness. Must be an illness going through Ottawa right now, because also Thomas Schaefer, the D lineman, is also out with illness this week. Nate Bahar, limited with an Achilles injury. Again, that always gives me a little bit of a cringe when I hear the word Achilles. Over on the Rough Riders side of the football, one name that actually is at least practicing a little bit here is Darrell Walker. He was limited in practice with a knee injury. He's just coming back from the 6th game. I'm not sure if they'll probably play him yet or not. Same thing also with Jerwan Breskison. Shoulder injury with him. Probably could use the help with the Canadian receiving side of things. I know that they just got Brandon Lenius back, and hopefully Mitch Picton will be healthy soon, just for some backup as well. But would be nice to see Breskison back out there as well, swapping in with Lenius, who is didn't practice actually this week so far. Foot injury for him as well. A couple neat other injuries that you may want to know about. Jackson Ford, backup defensive back. I don't see him playing very much, especially with Dulkey in there having a good season. He's got an ankle injury. He's limited in practice this week. Matt Dean, linebacker again. Full practice, though. He was going this week, which is nice to see. And then Keon Schaefer-Baker was limited in practice again. So that means he is trying to practice a little bit, Schaefer-Baker. I know that they've said now that he's probably going to be more of Labor Day. They're still going with Labor Day with him. But as much as I want to see him back, I also don't want to see Ryan with that big smug look on his face too many times, because I know that means bad things are about to happen for the Rough Riders.
I'm just waiting for him to come off the IR in our fantasy league and put him in there right after drafting him. So I've been waiting all season for KSB to come back.
I would expect a trade offer to come your way for that gentleman.
Hey, I'm always listening. I'll probably shut you down but I'll always listen to the trade offers at least. Let's get into fantasy.
I just don't think it'll be too much.
Let's get into fantasy players for this week in this matchup between these two teams. Touched on some injuries there from the Ottawa side, guys getting healthy. I don't know if Addison's coming back necessarily this week. Could be not till next week. But with Tavon Smith coming back, they also just signed Maurice French, who was let go by the Elks as well. A lot of changes at wide receiver for the Red Blacks. Also, Shaq Evans, this is his 2nd game back. I don't know what to do with their wide receiver room, so I'm staying away from them all in fantasy this week. But Dustin Crum, he's almost an auto start any given week. It's a given. Did you know he's the leading running back in the CFL in terms of yards per game? He averages 85 rushing yards per start since he's taken over as the starting running back. For comparison, Brady Oliveira leads all running backs with 75, so almost 10 more yards per game than the best running back in the CFL. He's $7,500. You get the league's best running back, who also happens to throw the ball over 20 times a game. Dustin Crum at the current price, it's not even a consideration for me. Not to put him in my lineup, pretty much locking him in there at quarterback, and honestly probably considering him to be a captain. For Ottawa, I also like their defense. The Riders have given up an average of 11.5 fantasy points per game to defenses over the last 4 weeks. We touched on some interception troubles for Mason Fine, and I think it's a great matchup for Red Blacks defense that can make some big plays, and did put up a big total last week, which also I think coincided with the return of Javon Santos-Knox into that lineup. Those are 2 guys I've got on Ottawa's side. Adam, either team in this game, who do you have?
Yeah, no, I've got the Ottawa defense, because you know what? I'm not very confident in Mason Fine not throwing a couple picks. So give me the Ottawa defense at least for one of them. And the other one that I've got right now is over on the green side of the football. Braden Lenius, yes, he had a bad week last week by missing a few catches. I think that they were trying to get him involved a little bit more against Toronto, and I think they'll try again against Ottawa. So Lenius and the Ottawa defense is what I've got picked.
Again, make sure you double check on those depth charts and injury reports there as well, right? I've heard Lenius' injury is not great, so could be out of the lineup potentially this week as well. So, Adam, make sure you set your lineup and update it properly if that happens. Mike, what about you from either Ottawa or Saskatchewan?
I don't need words to tell me exactly what Adam is thinking. I feel the wheels up in his brain about ready to combust every time we mention fantasy and lineup and the word set. It just seems to me like something of a trigger for Adam. So
I wonder why.
Don't worry, buddy. I feel for you. I'm just telling you what your face projects from here. No, but your original question to me is who do I like in fantasy? I like the Ottawa defense. I am really, really struggling with how I feel about Jamal Morrow. He's a guy that I've played in fantasy the last couple weeks to underwhelming results, I think would be fair. I wonder if there comes a point where you maybe look at a split in carries between him and Frankie Hitson. It just seems like they're not doing enough running the ball to help their quarterback, regardless of who it is. Again, that might be traced back to a byproduct of offensive line versus quarterback versus, a number of circumstances. So that's my long way of saying stay away from Jamal Morrow. For me personally, for a guy that seems to have been really disappointed by that individual. I keep playing Samuel Emelis in our private lead. I just seem to think that since that 3-touchdown game that he had, he's also been underutilized. Still waiting for him to make those big catches. But again, if a quarterback can't get you in the end zone, how do you expect to get, touchdown points? I guess would be a fair assessment. And again, for Ottawa, I like Crum. I like Hardy. I like Jake Hardy. He's quietly had a couple of
Justin Hardy.
Yeah, Justin Hardy. Yeah.
Jake, you don't want Jake Hardy. He's a Montreal receiver that hardly ever does anything.
Yeah. So Justin Hardy. Quietly, I think Ottawa's running game is giving me something to think about there. Just from a standpoint, but I think eventually that's going to be very successful, especially if Crum continues to run the ball the way he has. I think that opens up a little more options.
The only thing I'm worried about there is that for Devontae Williams, like anytime they get near the end zone, there's a large chance Williams isn't getting the run into the end zone. It's going to be Dustin Crum calling his own options.
And I think I think that's on Tahari Jones for giving it a bit of a different look.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's almost like you become so predictable down near the goal line.
Let's not hand the ball off to Litre on an I formation near the goal line on that key play like last week.
Don't even get me started, Ryan. I have agitation almost as much as Adam does with this lineup, not laughing about that. But that's a discussion for another day.
But yeah, no, you're right. I am impressed with what Devontae Williams did last week. It's just Crum's rushing ability makes me steer a bit clear there on that side. Another reason to add for staying away from Jamal Morrow, on top of what you mentioned, is never pick a running back against the Ottawa Red Blacks. Ottawa Red Blacks, they give up 3.4 yards per carry, which is best in the CFL. So if you want and expect for Jamal Morrow to have a good day, you better run the ball 20 to 30 times, and that's never going to happen in a game. So don't like that option either. But I do have two options on the Riders side I will throw out here for you guys. And Adam, you may want to plug your ears for the first one here, because I think if you're not taking Dustin Crum, I think Mason Fine is a very viable fantasy sleeper option for the week. He has averaged 40 passing attempts a game since he became the starter. And again, you don't run the ball against Ottawa, so expect more of the same again this week. 40 pass attempts means 40 opportunities for yardage there. 4 interceptions to 0 touchdowns so far does hurt his stat line, but let's say a slight adjustment in the opposite direction suddenly makes him a very good potential value play there. Can, limit it to 1 interception this week. If he can throw 1 or 2 touchdowns this week, for his $6,500 price, you're making bank.
All I can say is all I heard was good sleeper picks, so I'll presume you're talking about Jake Delagala, right?
No, it's Mason Fine. If Crum wasn't available, I would probably roll with him.
I'm so upset with him, I don't even want to make any more Fine jokes. I mean, it's not good anymore. Definitely not fun.
That's fine. The other option is Tevin Jones at wide receiver at $13,600. He leads all wide receivers in fantasy points per game so far this year with 17.3. He has 21 targets in his last 2 games when Mason Fine took over at quarterback. Again, expecting a high volume of passing from the Riders. And also Ottawa gives up a league worst 13.4 points per game to left wideouts, which is where Tevin Jones lines up. So, Sean Bain also has gotten that share of targets. They're around the same price. I don't think I'd be spending that much on 2 Saskatchewan wide receivers in this game. So give me Tevin Jones, who has the better matchup of the 2 there. Betting picks in this game, the Red Blacks are 1-point favorites on the road into Saskatchewan to face the Riders. The over-under line is set at 44. I guess I should go first on this one again. What do I want to do in this game? I could flip a coin on this one as well. I think it's going to be close right down to the wire. I believe in the magic from Dustin Crum. I think I'm going to take the Red Blacks to win this one. But I think it could be 44. Yeah, you know what? I'll take the over. I'll take the over on this one as well. I'll take Ottawa to win this one. I don't know if I'm going with Mike math here, like 28-24 or something like that. Football game here is what I could see happening. Let's go to you next, Mike.
Yeah, I feel this is a 1-possession game. I feel this is a 21-17 victory for the visitors coming here. I feel it's going to be decided in the last 3 minutes, and it's going to be decided on the final possession one way or another.
So 21-17, so you are taking the under, just to confirm.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Adam, what about you?
Well, I've been baiting this one all week, especially when it's this close. I mean, technically, Ottawa's pretty much beating that 3-point little buffer that they have for home team advantage quite nicely. So, you know what? I'm going to take the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and I'm going to go with a 30-27 game. Jake Delagala comes in the half and wins this one for the Riders. And I'm going to say that Brett Lowther walks this off into Pill Country, and the Rider fans can go home happy, and Craig Dickinson gets to keep his job for one more game. Because, honestly, I think it's almost to that time where Craig Dickinson's career or job is on the line. Not quite yet, but getting very close.
I mean, with how he's played so far this year, Brett Lauder might just walk off into pill country for other reasons than, a successful walk-off homer. But
I think either way, he walks off into pill country, he misses or he hits it. So
I have a question about that. If you seem so set that Craig Dickinson's job is as in peril as you and a couple of other Rider fans that I seem to know is, I understand that, but what would you say to those that said, well, he hasn't really been given a proper quarterback? If you look at Cody, if you look at, historically things going down the drain for lack of production at the quarterback position of late. Now, is that on Dickinson or is that on O'Day for not necessarily dealing with the offensive line and dealing with the quarterback position? What if my argument as a coach is, yes, but had the general manager put me in the best position to be successful?
to me, that's not acceptable to make that argument if we're talking about the quarterback position, because if you look at the quarterback talent around the CFL, like they've had some of the better quarterback talent there with Trevor Harris and Cody Fajardo, et cetera. Like nobody has good quarterback talent right now. So you can't use quarterback as an excuse for your team's woes when everybody's on their backups and half of them have hardly played in the CFL. Adam?
And Mike,
as a head coach, am I expected to work my magic about an offensive line then that hasn't performed to standards? I'm not.
Well, that's a different story.
I'm not disputing what you guys are saying.
Mike, here's my thing. You haven't made a proper call on a special teams play. You decided to go on third down when you shouldn't go on third down. You've decided to do a bunch of other dumb things as a coach. And those ones are coaching decisions that has nothing to do with the general manager. General manager deserves it as well right now. Because, I mean, we still don't have proper depth in offensive line and that sort of thing. Yeah, you can blame Jeremy O'Day for that. But going for a 2nd and 7 and going on a running play, come on. That's not on the general manager. That's on the coach. You don't go do stuff like that. So to me, again, going and guaranteeing your starting quarterback's job, even though he has nothing proven, and saying, yep, we're going fine next week without even hesitating, stuff like that eventually gets the Rider Nation pretty wound up. And they are wound up right now. And we all know that right now Craig Dickinson is on a last year. We all know it. It wouldn't cost the Riders very much to get rid of him right now and possibly bring in a guy like, I don't know, Henry Burris, who's been looking in the NFL like a decent coach that should get a job pretty soon. Why not bring him into the CFL, give him a head coaching job in Saskatchewan where everybody loves this team? That would be an awesome pickup for the Rough Riders for a head coach.
It's been a while. It's been a while since we've had Henry Burris come and turn a team around, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the interviews he would give during halftime would just be epic. So, you know what? It's a win-win for everybody. But you know what? In all honesty, I doubt they're going to get Dickinson, or O'Day won't get rid of Dickinson. Reynolds won't get rid of O'Day. So we're stuck with him for the rest of the year.
Mike, quick thoughts before we move along.
Yeah, how would you feel about a Jim Barker, Paul LaPolice combo?
I don't think Lapo's coming back.
My thing is this: let's get some new talent in the league for our coaching staffs. Henry Burris would be a great one because he hasn't been around he's been around in the CFL. He's been starting to learn how to coach in the NFL, which is great. I hope he gets an NFL job, but he still seems to be taking these internships mostly with teams. I think he's with the Rams right now, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I know he's not with Jacksonville anymore. He's with some other team. I think it was the Rams as a assistant coach internship thing. So, you know what? I would love to see him come back to the CFL and be a head coach. And boy, would Saskatchewan be happy to have. They honestly might even do a Henry chant for him.
Also, Lapo is now, turning into one of the top color guys on TSN. He's not leaving that job for a head coaching job anytime soon based on his track record as a head coach, and I don't think he should. Let's move on to our final segment here before we wrap things up and take a look at the week that was in the CFL fantasy leagues. In our draft league, I bounced back right up to the top of the week, 100.6 points for myself. Thanks in large part to the Argos defense and David Cote, who made up a combined 41 points there for me. Adam, you had the second best score of the week, much the same for you. Defense and special teams, Rene Paradis, 22 points there for you. The Lions with that shutout get 15 there also. Mikey came in third on the week with 74.5. Dane Evans was the top quarterback on the week, led your way there. And when the Argos falter, so does one Trey Colbeck, who put up 43.7 points on the week because the Argos had a rough day offensively. Overall standings, I'm in first at 677. Mike's at 628.7. Trey's at 599.8. And Adam, you're quickly picking up steam here, 567.4. Only 30 or so points behind Trey. You're right back in the middle of things after 2 good weeks in a row for you. Waiver wire transactions, we had 2 so far this week. Trey, after his down week, made a couple of moves. He added Mason Fine and dropped Taylor Cornelius, and also added Braylon Addison and dropped Javon Catoy. So Trey getting ready for when Addison's back in the lineup there. I like those moves. We'll see if any more come down the pipe from anybody after the...
The only question I have is why $10?
I don't know. Braylon Addison has been one of the top receivers in the CFL in the past. Maybe he thought others would bid. I just didn't have time to put any lineup changes in for myself. So, yeah, that's my thought there. And then if we look at the CFL Podcast Fantasy League, this past week, first of all, Adam, Trey, and myself play in that one. This past week was free for all week. We all played against the league average, which was 75.1 points on the week, a low scoring week across the board. I managed to pull it out with 80.9 points. Trey and Adam did fall below the red line there. Adam, you were close. You were real close on the week, but is this where I should give you your minute to rant, or?
My rant happened last Saturday, just after the BC Edmonton game at about 11:15 that night. Yeah, I'm done ranting.
All right, that's fair. More lineup troubles for Adam with lineups not setting, unfortunately. I'm still in first in the league. Go me. Adam, Trey, we got to get you back into the playoff spots. We'll see if that happens this week. I face Travis from the 2 and Out CFL podcast. Trey faces Kayla from the Turf District. And Adam, you face Steve from Piffle's podcast. Make sure you check out all those great shows there as well. Now we go over to the CFC Discord League, where the 4 of us are all playing alongside 8 other members of our community there. All of us won our matchups this week, but Mike. Mike, you lost by 3 points. You had the second highest score of the week, but you lost to, I'm going to try to pronounce this here, Richard. Cheppy is the username here. And Mike, one short loss after another for you.
Pardon me?
One small loss after another for you in the Discord League.
Eventually, I'm going to get this right, and rather lose closely now than in October and November, if you get my drift.
I had the opposite result. I won my matchup over Discord user Sandwiches by 0.6 points. So I got lucky in that one there. Overall standings in that one, we're getting our butts kicked. Adam, you're the leader out of the 4 of us in 4th place at 5-3. FM Fan 2014 moving into 1st place in the overall standings there. This week, Trey gets Larry, Mike, you get Barry, I get Brandon, and Adam, you're facing Extreme 88. So good luck to everybody this week, and thanks to our members of the Discord community for playing alongside of us. It's been a lot of fun, and all the back and forth banter there has been enjoyable as well. All right, now we're in 44 minutes into this. Should we get into wrapping things up here, guys? I think we should. I think we will do that right now. So tune in again next week. We'll be back with our Week 10 preview, double digits, crazy, here on the Canadian Football Countdown, where we'll do all of these fun things as we did tonight, we'll take a look at the storylines, injury reports, fantasy players, and betting odds again next week. Wednesday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time live. We're catching in the feeds the next morning. Also, make sure you check out, if you're interested, check out our Discord channel. Lots of great stuff going on in there, including the Tuesday Drive Home Collins show. May or may not be happening this upcoming week. Mike, we got to talk about that one because I might have a bit of a scheduling conflict there. So stay tuned. But most weeks you can catch that live there. And if you want to follow us on social media, oh, that's not what I wanted. Where did everybody go? Hang on. That's what I was looking for. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on Twitter at CF Countdown Pod, Facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod there as well. You can follow me on Twitter at CooperTrooper42. Make sure you check out everything Trey's got going on. He's got a lot of good stuff with his horse racing show as well, 3 times a week now. You can find him at Trey Harness Link if you're interested in all of his stuff he's got going on. Hopefully we'll have him back next week there too. Adam, where can people find everything you're doing these days?
Well, you can find me at Adam Stewart 1. Bear with me. There's going to be a lot of combine and harvest photos coming. Took a look at the canola today, and I think we're about 5 to 7 days away from starting to mow that stuff down. By mow it, I mean, swath it. We don't actually mow it. Same thing with the wheat. It looks pretty close. I think maybe by the end of next week, maybe. Hopefully. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But you can find all the farm stuff over at Adam Stewart 1, and also probably my rants on why my CFL fantasy did not save again and why I'm still short and didn't win my fantasy week this week again. Totally not going to rant about it, but definitely going to mention it. Mike, where can you guys find you?
First of all, I will FaceTime you this week or something as you set your lineup so you have a witness. Do you think your reports into the Genius Sports will carry more weight if you have a witness submit an official statement? I don't know. Just a thought. Mike, what do you all got going on these days? Where can people find it?
I just want to make a couple notes before people can find me. Congratulations to Michael O'Shea Jr. If the name rings a bell, that's Michael O'Shea's son. Was in camp with the Blue Bombers recently with the Okanagan Sun. The CJFL was recently announced earlier today, actually, as the newest recruit for the University of Manitoba Bison's football team. So congratulations to the O'Shea family. How you get Pops being on the defense and Son being a wide receiver, I'm not sure. Somebody will have to ask Coach about that one. The other one is also congratulations to Paul Lapolis on doing a great job in the booth. Reminded me like Tony Romo in his first year. Really insightful. Really enjoyed that broadcast. Actually, I was out of town, so I had to watch that game back with full sound. Really, really great stuff there from Lapo. Anyway, you can find me on Twitter, or I guess X, as it's called now, at Mike Darrell. I don't know if you noticed, but they've changed the retweet function to reposted. Interesting. In the world of social media these days. You can find Game Time TV for now at facebook.com/Game Time TV MB, but that is subject to change. And we're feverishly working on alternatives here in the office. So it's great to be back. And happy to be talking football for almost 2 hours tonight.
Right on. I've turned automatic updates off on my phone so that it stays Twitter. I'm gonna keep riding that. I'm not going to x.com over on the phone side of things at least. What a wild time we live in there. Thanks, Elon. If you enjoyed the show tonight and you want more CFL content, check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network as well at CF Pod Network. And whatever podcast platform you do listen on, we do appreciate it if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, help us grow the show We always appreciate that. On behalf of our panel here this evening, for Mike and Adam, I'm Ryan saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.